Hey, Shalise or Ethan. Kurt just emailed asking for an email to be sent to him with the Zoom link.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just reading a quick email real quick and then I'll be back.
Anybody else have this?
What's that, Rick? You're frozen.
Rick's frozen.
Did I make any difference, Malena? I just made another change.
It does sound way better.
Thank
And I'm
you.
just going to remind you, I'm at my office. And so there's people talking on the other side of my window. And because they're not supposed to get close to each other, they tend to yell at each other. Okay. so if you hear some yelling about taxes in the background, it's my workers.
Well, I'm going to keep myself on mute because the machinery that they're using to spray paint everything is, it's really loud. So I'll turn off.
I've got these because I've got homeschooling going on in my house on the other side of my door. So I
Yeah.
might need that at some point.
I've got homeschooling and a kitten causing chaos.
Got a homeschooling and a 2-year-old causing chaos.
So this is Mark Schaffner. Can people hear me?
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Yeah.
I don't expect to say much, but I can't help but add after I've just heard about all your situations. I have nothing but me, peace, and quiet.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I got a new chair, especially because of planning board meetings. I had a stool that had zero support, zero maneuverability, and now I've got a bona fide captain's chair.
Nice.
For which the city of Plattsburgh is hopefully going to reimburse you handsomely.
Oh yeah, because that's how it works. No, I just
Yeah.
feel like I'm large and in charge sitting here at my, reminds you of the captain's chair on a ship, on a military ship that would all sneak into whenever the captain wasn't on board.
There's Kurt.
Hi, yeah, thanks for sending the link. I wasn't able to find it in my inbox.
Sorry, Kurt. Sometimes the 001 falls off your email when we go to put it in. So sorry. I don't know who that is at Plattsburgh, but whoever that is getting your email.
Funny.
I think we have everybody.
Okay. One sec. All right. I'm just going to switch Wi-Fi, so I might drop out for 1 second.
Shalise, was the latest information you sent for this meeting under community development or your name? Do you remember?
So Malena has sent the most recent information.
Oh,
for
it's
this
from Malena. Okay, good. I just want to bring it up. So I have it in addition. Yep, here we go.
Before we get started, while we're waiting for Derek, I just wanted to thank the board for all of their hard work. This is a special meeting to talk about the Prime project, which has been in front of you guys for like a year and a half, I believe. So I just wanted to say thank you for your stamina for getting through all of the different project changes, the plans, the studies, the comments from the public, the comments from staff. It has been pretty overwhelming. I know staff's been overwhelmed at times, but hopefully we're really close to the finish line here. And I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for that.
Okay, I'm back. A lot of stuff happening all at once, but that's all right. Okay, so everyone's here. We will get started. This is City of Plattsburgh Planning Board special meeting on January 12th, 2021. And specifically what we are here for is to basically hear the changes that Prime made since our last meeting, which was December 28th, I believe. And they were making changes to add 16 parking spaces on site, and they provided us with those plans, which was a condition of approval from the ZBA, which was the reason for doing that. So essentially, let me just give a quick kind of overview of where I think things will go today. So first, I think Dean Schneller is going to be covering like a summary of the finding statements and the resolutions if we get to that point after hearing from Prime. But I'll let him do a quick summary of just what he's going to cover. Then we can hear from Prime on what changes were made. The planning board, any member can ask questions, obviously, at any point during this whole thing. But after Prime gives their presentation, we can ask questions, and we can put up anything else we have as far as questions that are pertinent to the changes that were made. Then I'll have Dean take us through the finding statements and resolutions for each, the PUD subdivision, the minor subdivision, and then the site plan. And that should take us through everything we need to do. So Dean, do you want to just quickly?
Yep. Can we do a roll call vote as well, though, just to get it started?
Sorry. So Shalise or Milena, go ahead.
Sorry, Marissa Gilbert.
Here.
Derek Rosenbaum.
Here.
Rick Perry. Rick, I think you're muted or frozen. Okay. Reg Carter.
Here.
Loretta Rietzma.
Here.
Kurt Gervich is also here.
Yes.
Kurt. Rick. Rick Perry
He's
is in
here.
attendance,
Real
but
quick.
currently frozen.
Okay.
Okay, so I can proceed. We will need Rick to be able to hear and see us in real time. So we'll just do a little check with him once he gets back. But for our purposes right now, I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we're going to try to accomplish today. So with that, I'll turn to the proposed agenda for this afternoon.
Hold on, Dean. I think, Rick, are you back on?
He's
Rick.
unfrozen. He's unfrozen, but he's still muted.
Rick, you're muted.
I'm here. I'm just trying to get to a different location. See if
Okay.
it'll help. It's the fourth time it's happened, so
All right.
we'll see.
Shalise just wants to do roll call for you real quick.
Thank you.
And Rick Perry.
Yeah,
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
Sure. So we have three major items on the agenda today. The first item is the minor subdivision. That involves the carving off of the Broad Street parking lot from the main parcel on Durkee Street. As part of each of these agenda items, we'll have a three-step process. The first step is going to be to review the seeker finding statement. The second step will be to review a seeker resolution. If that is approved, then we turn to the final step, which would be the action on the item itself. So that same process will follow for the three agenda items: the minor subdivision, which again is the carving off of the Broad Street lot. The second item is the PUD subdivision, which is internal lot line adjustments, basically retain the waterfront for the city of Plattsburgh, to carve off the ICV parcel, and then to have the remaining piece, which is the parcel that would be sold to Prime, as well as cleaning up some outlier pieces from the PUD to basically make it a nice, clean PUD parcel. If and when we accomplish those first two agenda items, the third item is for the site plan review. Same process where we will review the seeker finding statement. If acceptable, there will be a motion to adopt and approve the seeker finding statement. And then finally, it would be a resolution to adopt the site plan approval. So with that, just a very quick overview. As Milena already noted, thanks for everyone for putting the time and effort into this. It's been a long slog, but here we are, over a year of numerous meetings, many long hours into the night. We have had several public hearings. The first round was in February, which was continued through April to the extent written comments were accepted. And then based on some project changes, the public hearing was reopened in August and then closed at that point. As I mentioned, we'll be completing some seeker tasks. This board is well aware now of the DGIS process, and that's going to be hopefully completed today. We're also well aware that the County Planning Board issued a decision on a portion of this project that will require supermajority vote based on the Planning Board's denial of this project. The only other thing is a kind of a technical point. Derek had mentioned that we may want to, because we're on Zoom, we may want to use a slightly different strategy for voting. It's up to the board on how you want to do it. But I think Derek liked the model that the ZBA was using, where when we come to a decision point, he can call for a vote and every member can rely on the chat feature and send a message directly to Shalise indicating whether they approve or disapprove of the motion. And then Shalise can do a roll call of that vote. If that's appropriate or desirable, then we can use that. If not, we could just do a simple roll call vote, whatever everyone wants, but I know Derek raised that. As far as the documents themselves, these have been in draft form up and through till today. There's been some or last evening rather. So it's been a working document. Part of it was due to the fact that the zoning board approved it, but also imposed conditions, which, as we discussed at the end of December, led to the applicant Prime sharpening their pencils and finding those additional 16 spaces in order to satisfy the ZBA's condition. So other than that, I'll turn it back over to Derek unless there's any questions about process. And I believe the board will want to hear from Prime to see what exactly are those changes with respect to the additional parking.
Okay, thank you, Dean. So at this point, unless anyone from the planning board has anything right now, I think we'll turn it over to Prime to hear them explain the changes. Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
Hey everyone, Charlie Gottlieb on behalf of Prime. I know there's been some correspondences back and forth, so if you have any questions specifically about that, just feel free to ask. I won't dive too deeply into the weeds, but in substance, at the ZBA meeting, however we came up with these additional parking spaces, once it's approved and finalized by the planning board, we'll have to go back to the zoning board of appeals for what they're calling a determination of consistency. That is solely at the planning board level, or the ZBA level, excuse me. So whatever we do here, the ZBA will need to find that it's in the spirit and intent of the special use permit resolutions. The letter I submitted this morning kind of clarifies what actually happened at the ZBA meeting related to what our task was. Our task was to find additional parking spaces so that all 92 parking spaces on the surface lot could be made available to the public. The ZBA was quite clear that if that involved a reduction in the alternate parking calculation, then that might cause an issue. However, our design team was able to maintain the alternate parking calculation that has always been before this board and added 16 off-street parking spaces within Prime's building. So all of Prime's uses, residential and commercial tenants, the required parking per the PUD requirement will be inside and within the building. So for that explanation, I'll hand it over to Turner and then maybe over to Steve to go through how we actually made that happen.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So Turner Bradford here. Honestly, it's probably easiest for Steve to jump right in because as Charlie said, all the changes were internal to the building. So really the site plan hasn't changed. We modified the site plan sheet to reflect the parking that's shown on there to match the layout in the building. We modified the general note sheet to change the parking charts to show that the parking within the building has been increased 16 to meet the entire demand of the project. And we changed the easement plan to reflect all 92 spaces on the surface lot being dedicated to public use in that easement. But really, those were the sheets submitted, and those were the changes made to the site plan, and everything else was inside the building. So, Steve, if you want to jump in, go for it.
Okay, thanks, Turner. So really, we did it through a combination of 3 strategies: being conscious of the cost impact on the project and trying to minimize that cost impact. So part of it, we picked up what we could by converting some of the amenity terrace to parking in the area adjacent to the building in the center. And Turner, correct me if I'm wrong on the count, but I think we picked up about 6 spaces there by creating kind of an L-shaped footprint for that dead end uphill center section open to the sky. We picked up, I think, 3 under the building simply by looking more closely at the geometry of the layout. We picked up a couple in the covered areas. And then the balance of it to achieve and maintain the 16 total that were needed were accommodated by extending the lowest level under the amenity terrace along the east side of the building. I think that's about just under a 4,000 square foot additional section for the basement. The cost is reasonable in that they were already excavating much of that part of the site anyway to build the portion of the parking on the south side. So the net impact of all that is without breaking the bank, so to speak, for the project, we could still accommodate the additional 16 spaces within the footprint. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Is
Yeah,
it appropriate to ask the question of the surface parking on the adjacent lot? Will that be part of the special assessment parking district? And if so, maybe Matt, could you just share with us what that special assessment parking district is going to look like?
Sure. So the 92 spaces, of course, on the southern surface lot, that's all going to be available to the public. Since it is public parking within the boundaries of the special assessment district, it can be considered as part of the special assessment district. It is included in the city's parking calculations to determine the number of compensatory parking spaces the city is creating or through Prime making available for public use within the SAD. So it will be available to the public and will function to a large degree similar to the way that the other city-owned lots within the SAD function. Of course, it will be managed by Prime, but in function, it will be similar to the other lots.
Okay. Does that mean that this will be paid parking and then paid to whom?
And Dean can confirm this, but I believe it is Prime's intention to charge for parking in that surface lot. And while Prime has offered some concessions, specifically, the agreement not to enter into any any leases with their own residents or commercial clients for the use of those spaces, it does leave them the option to charge for parking if they so choose, and that parking revenue would go to Prime.
Okay. And I don't know that they've, formulated the special assessment parking district is based on maintenance costs without profit built in. Will that concept change? If so, how will it change?
So you're speaking of the broader SAD?
I'm speaking of the change in nature of how how that parcel, one, functions, but two, how does it maintain itself?
Yeah, Prime will be responsible for all maintenance of that parking lot as it is on their property. They'll certainly have the right to charge for parking, depending on what direction the city council decides to go in as far as an updated parking management system for the downtown area. That may include paid parking in off-street lots. That was a recommendation of the parking committee. As far as a practical matter, it's in Prime's best interest to charge rates for parking that are similar to those rates charged by the city and the surrounding lots, or otherwise they could very well price themselves out of the market. So we anticipate that management structures, at least as far as fees charged go, will be similar not only in the city-owned lots within the SAD, but also in the Prime lot.
Okay, do you envision any other changes to parking within the downtown district as it relates to the special assessment district?
Sure, it was another recommendation of the parking committee that the special assessment district, at least the portion of it that includes the SAD levy, which assesses property owners based on square footage for any real property they own within the district. It was the recommendation that be shifted to a model whereby the users of the system itself, the actual people parking downtown, pay for the cost of the system's administration. And of course, it's not the city's intention to make a profit on this. It's simply looking to charge enough to pay for the administration of the system and all of the capital costs that went into the city's construction of the new parking lots. But if any additional revenue exists after those charges are paid, it is the intention to create a separate fund within the city specifically so those funds could go towards improvements in the downtown area so people paying those parking fees know what they're getting for their money and they can see it.
Well explained, Matt. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a quick question. How are those parking fees going to be collected?
Loretta, are you referring to the SAD fees by the city or by Prime on their lot?
No, the SAD.
Of course, this is all subject to council approval, but the recommendation from the parking committee was to keep the on-street regulations largely intact. We don't intend to charge for on-street parking. We might standardize the on-street parking time limits, for 2 hours everywhere rather than the smattering of 10 minutes, 30 minutes in random places that we have now. But it would likely be a combination of off-street parking permits, off-street parking revenue through the kiosk system, and then any ticketing revenue that the city gets from people exceeding that on-street parking time limit or anywhere in the lots.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. I had just a few questions on the additional parking. If Milena, if you can pull up the PowerPoint.
I sure can. Okay, so this is the site plan that was recently submitted on January 7th with the additional parking on site.
Thank you. Can you go to the Mackenzie plans, A2.3? Perfect. Okay, so Steve, I went through and just tried to figure out where things are added, and I think I got it, but I just wanted to double check with you. So up here, it looks like there were 7 spaces added. This is that amenity terrace?
Yes, that's correct.
And so, like you said, that little L that juts out to the right, that's where most of the spaces were added. And can you explain over to the left where the apartments are in orange? It looks like there's 2 spaces within the doorway, or am I looking at 2 separate levels there?
You're looking at 2 separate levels. There, if you look at the A2.2, it shows more of the parking layout in that area.
Okay.
But it's
that amenity terrace is 1 level below the apartments, first floor apartments.
The amenity terrace is same level as the apartments on the right. And the apartments on the left are the ones that were raised 3 feet to have the headroom where you have the parking underneath. So that middle parking you talked about is actually a sloped deck.
Okay.
Comes up within a couple of feet of the amenity terrace at the top where you see the handicap ramp, and then it slopes down and tucks under the housing units on the south side.
And I can presume that those spaces weren't double counted with the other site plan or the other page. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. And then so down to, you can go to A2.1, it should be the one before. And so counting those, it looks like you added 2 spaces on this sheet.
Which sheet? 2.1?
2.1, yep, the one that's showing.
Yeah, so we added that section on the lower right, Derek. That's the additional section that is farther north, where before that was a dead end. So by creating that drive lane that comes through the right side of the original, we lost 3 spaces, so we had to make that up with the size of the footprint that's new.
Now, does that drive lane go down into the basement parking?
It's all connected, yes.
Okay. All right, and then Milena, can you go to 2.2?
I sure can.
So now this is the basement plan, except where those dash marks are, that's where we're looking at separate levels, correct?
Yes, that's where you have the cut marks. So that one you're seeing in this plan is actually the one that comes up close to the amenity terrace. So that middle part on the left of the center slash line is open to the sky. And then there's a drive lane that tucks under that coming down as you circulate. And then the same happens with the lane along Durkee. That slopes down and tucks underneath the drive lane you see on this plan, the parking bay on the south side of the building.
Okay, and then if I counted correctly, that's where you added 7 spaces down in this basement level.
That's actually more than that. Some of that we picked up by changing the geometry. Like I said, some of the spaces that were under the building, but the bulk of it is really extending on A2.1, that parking that comes north along the east side of the footprint.
I'm going to go back to that one, Melina.
Which one? I'm sorry.
2.1.
So down in that bottom right-hand corner, that's all new right there, you're saying?
Right.
Okay. And it looks like you changed the direction of some of the parking spaces to pick up a couple here or there.
Yeah, before, if you look at those 4 in the center, between the middle and the east drive lane before, we actually had 3 there, for instance.
Okay.
And the 2 above that next to the stair and elevator, we only showed 1 there before. So by rotating that and sharing the drive lane, we actually picked up, it was 2 in this level and 1 on the level above. And that's just looking at the geometry of the layout.
Okay. Now, did any of the aisle widths change?
No.
Okay.
I have a quick question. How are the parking spaces that are for designated for residents going to be identified so that people who are using the public spaces aren't parking there?
I think that's a question for the owner, but I would think, Loretta, that those that are public would be in that first section. Come off of Durkee, or in the middle part as you come up that dead end ramp we talked about.
Right.
That's going to be the most convenient for public use. So,
But again, if there's overflow, I'm just wondering how people are going to know which parking space. I mean, is it just going to be reserved, stenciled on the asphalt, or?
yeah, I think that's a question for Dean, but I would think, yeah, they would assign probably parking spaces in the basement to residents and keep spaces that are near that initial site access point for the commercial or the public requirement.
Yeah, we typically handle that with a permit type of a situation where people have to park either a sticker or something on their dashboard, and that we would monitor that. We in some instances will have gated entryway for the tenants or a garage access in some of our sites. That's part of what we'll determine in the final design stage, but we will have a method of monitoring that.
Okay. Thanks.
I had a couple more questions, just probably for Turner. I see that the number of allowed compact and subcompact spaces increased to 61 for each. Is that just based on, that's a percentage calculated off of the total number of spaces on the site?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So because you went from, or you added the 16 spaces on site, you were able to go up, even though the allowed number of spaces didn't surpass the previous, or I mean, the actual number of spaces didn't surpass the previous allowed number of spaces.
Right. So our total number of allowed compact and subcompact went up because our total spaces went up. And I believe we did add some additional compact, but not all of them compact.
Okay.
But we still don't exceed the allowable percentage.
Okay. And then on the minimum open space, that number didn't change, even though you took up some of the amenity space. Was the amenity space not considered open space?
So we were not including the amenity space in our open space calculation previously. Open space can be hardscaped, but only a third of your open space can be hard. So you can include hardscape in your open space, but it can only be a third of your total. And so we were including hardscape that was exterior to the building up to the allowable amount previously. So we weren't including any of the amenity space within our open space calculation to begin with. That's why that number didn't change.
Okay. So on this plan here, it's pretty much the greens, the space that's in green along with the sidewalks.
Yeah, thereabouts, yeah. Yes, yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it.
So that's, so the bulk, so the bulk calculations, that's why they did not change.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else from the board have questions on the changes or on any of the site plans that we've got up right now?
Yeah, I have a question, Derek.
Okay.
Originally, we received departmental comments regarding the original site plan. Due to the degree of changes, mainly access to the amenity space terrace area from the public street where we closed off that access point. Has any department commented on that, or have they reviewed this new layout?
Rick, I can speak to that. The new plans were sent to all of the different departments, and the departments did provide a second set of will serve letters, if you may, around August, I believe. So the fire department, the police department, DPW, MLD all provided letters that they had reviewed the new site plan and they'd still be able to service the site based on the changes. And I have all of those letters.
Okay. My other question, and I know I've brought this up repeatedly and I'm going to bring it up again, and that's Durkee Street. We have a number of that identify turning radiuses off this site onto the proposed development of Durkee Street. I'm not asking for authority on the approval of Durkee Street. Where I'm coming from, and this goes back to the pedestrian egress as well. How do we identify that Durkee Street will accommodate the impact on it if we don't know what the design of Durkee Street is going to be? And I understand your arguments, the cart before the horse. What I'm not satisfied with is the fact that we have areas that require egress to open legal space, but we don't show the open legal space or how people get there. We have egress from parking areas onto a thoroughfare, a street that we can't identify or use that layout because it hasn't been approved. So how can we say that a fire truck can egress the open spots, the open parking area, when we don't have an approved plan for the area that they egress to? Or how can we say that the pedestrian traffic exiting this building can egress to a legal open space when once you get out of the building, you're on this new development that we're not supposed to consider? Honestly, I don't like that part of this whole process to this point. And if you can convince me otherwise, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, I can comment on some of that, Rick, and those are good questions. I appreciate your bringing that up. As far as egress, the one you asked about previously, the stair, I think in the southwest corner, right? You were concerned about. So we'd have a striped walkway across the drive lane to the south side, across the back of the parking stalls, and that would egress out to the sidewalk. So it's not a function of what happens on Durkee Street. As far as egress, it's a function of having sidewalks or some appropriate circumstance as somebody exits the building, okay? I think otherwise, as far as fire trucks, it's more a matter of fire department access. Courtyard, it's not the case that certainly fire trucks, depending on the size, would have to drive under and up in the center. So their concern was more really the height of the building and have an appropriate ability if they wanted to bring a ladder in there to have access to the balconies, et cetera. So this is really the same circumstance, in other words, as the original, in that regard, where you drove under the building from Durkee to get to the courtyard. That hasn't changed in terms of the clearance or the circumstance or the approach as far as fire trucks. So I don't think it really matters what happens as far as Durkee Street, as far as impact on egress or as far as impact on access to the courtyard, certainly not in terms of fire safety for the building.
Yeah, and Rick, speaking from the city's perspective, and I'll use the analogy from this past year of Cogan Avenue, the redesign of that street. The city's engineer took a look at it. They made some recommendations to the council, but there comes a point when the engineer has to, regardless of what the client may want, the engineer still has to design any improvement according to public safety standards and any other regulations that come from DOT. So of course, this is a conceptual design for Durkee Street, and when the time comes to get into the nitty gritty of designing what those improvements will look like, if there is any aspect of that design that is going to restrict public safety or have any adverse effect, our engineer is not going to agree to put that into the final design. So there are safeguards built into that. If you recall from last summer, there was quite a bit of controversy because a lot of the residents on Cogan Avenue didn't understand why some of their front yards would need to be basically taken by the city in order to redesign that street. But it's a safety issue, and there's only so much that a client can ask. The engineer still has to perform according to their professional standards. So whatever issues may arise when we get into the detailed work for the design of Durkee Street, our engineer is not going to do anything that is going to put the public at risk. And if doing so, if making accommodations on Durkee Street requires the loss of a few of those proposed parking spaces, then so be it. It's not going to have a detrimental effect on the SAD as a whole. But of course, public safety and walkability, those are always primary concerns. And they would trump any considerations about what ideally the city might like.
Okay. The other factor that concerned me is, we counted within the downtown parking district the number of parking spaces on Durkee Street. If they're only used for illustration, how can we use that calculation to make a determination?
Well, the factor of safety in the parking counts that the city had conducted indicated that there are, even at peak usage right now, 250 empty public parking spaces at peak usage. So looking at the city's parking calculations, I think the final GEIS, well, actually, if we're talking about all 92 spaces on the Durkee lot, I'm sorry, not the Durkee lot, the Prime lot being available to the public, that increases the number of public spaces available. But if it turns out that we have to remove, say, 3 or 4 spaces from a proposed Durkee Street, that's not going to get us anywhere near the 85% utilization rate that would usually necessitate consideration of additional parking options. It would have to be on the order of 150 spaces.
And
So
Rick,
you're saying we're going to identify the parking spaces numerically, but if it falls short, and we can disregard it?
No, I'm saying that it's a conceptual design, but the number of spaces that we have in excess of what we actually need, the difference of 3 or 4 spaces does not make a material difference to the utilization rate that the city can expect to see in the SAD when all of this is completed.
and if I may, Rick, so this typically happens a lot in site plan reviews that I've worked on. The planning board has a plan in front of it. The plan in front of it considers Durkee Street to be one way. So what happens if something changes after the approval? And it is, what I've noticed is if there's a significant change, sometimes called a field change, that is substantial in nature, that changes the site plan or increases an impact of some nature, then that change to the site plan would have to come back before this planning board, before a building permit can get issued, let's say. Typically, that determination is made by the building inspector when they go to pull a building permit. So the building inspector will take a look at the site plan resolution, the approved site plans, the special use permit resolutions, and the current conditions, and say, okay, it's building code compliant, it's fire code compliant, complies with the site plan, complies with the special use permit resolutions. If it doesn't, then a building permit isn't issued. If something has changed that is a significant difference from our approved site plan, then we'd have to come back before this board and get an amendment.
Hey, I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Rick, just thinking, I mean, it's something, I don't know if it solves the issue for you, but it's something we could put in the, unless it's already in there, but make a statement in the resolutions basically saying that we are approving this plan based on an assumption of Durkee Street. And if that substantially changes, then that could change our decision. Is that kind of what you're getting at, or something different?
Well, I think what concerns me more is the whole perception that we're approving a plan that half part of the plan we're not supposed to regard at all. I don't feel comfortable with doing that, to be honest with you. And in Charlie's explanation, I think if I'm reading it right, we do identify with Durkee Street in the proposed plan. And if the city deviates the permanent design of Durkee Street beyond this conceptual plan, then there may be grounds for the building inspector to say it doesn't really, it's not consistent with the way the planning board approved the site plan approval.
Rick, yeah, what you just said is exactly what I was going to echo. So our next step administratively, if the board approves this today, would be to send this to Saratoga Associates, who's designing Durkee Street. So they would work with this plan to, engineer Durkee Street. And if they found for some reason the pedestrian egress or the vehicular egress ingress of the building just wasn't going to work with their conceptual plan and it would significantly change the site plan, then obviously we would recommend that they go back to the planning board to receive that review and that modification of the plan. So any changes to Durkee Street that would create changes to the site plan would have to come back in front of you guys. And I believe the project is aware of that, and we're aware of that.
Okay. Can we just ask Dean to confirm that if we proceed along those lines, he's good with that?
Well, we would need to pin that down. I don't like the idea of any changes or I would like some more specificity with exactly what you're talking about. If it's, any modification to a conceptual plan, then, a street light or a stop sign being moved 2 inches would conceivably trigger that. So I think we do need to have some threshold for what exactly you're talking about. If it's a parking space or two for safety reasons, whether that qualifies or not, or is it something larger than that? So I would want to pin that down rather than speak in general terms, because otherwise we have nothing to apply if it's too vague.
Yeah. Right from, the first meeting on that the Durkee Street redesign was presented to us, I've always had this fear that we don't have enough maneuvering room behind these diagonal spaces. I don't see how that's legitimately going to work. I don't even think that it's compliant with any kind of regulation that identifies maneuvering area. I agree with the concept to make it work, but I don't think legitimately, you may need to change these to a different angle of design.
So my suggestion, I mean, I obviously this board does not have jurisdiction over Durkee Street.
Not asking for it.
Who does have jurisdiction is the DOT. So some condition that I would, think could be workable is that Durkee Street has to be in full compliance with any DOT or federal design standards. And then that's going to be your trigger. If we don't have something objective, then I don't know how we would apply that as a condition.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have very specific guidelines that construction has to follow. DOT standards, building code, fire code. As long as we are in compliance with all of those, then there really isn't a basis to have any back and forth. So, and we always will have, no matter what happens on Durkee Street, no matter what happens on our building, we have to comply with DOT specifications, building code and fire code. So if we leave it at that, then that should, mitigate the concern.
Yeah, and Charlie, I'm not asking for our authority to supersede the those agencies at all. What I'm saying is, I think we need to identify the proposed layout of Durkee Street as something more than just an illustration, because many of the turning radiuses coming out of the parking areas, the maneuvering room from the on-street diagonal parking, those are all identified, and we're making an assumption on an illustration. I'd like to say, and I don't know that we can do this, but I'm just asking the question, that Durkee Street in the illustration is a little bit more than just an illustration, that we've based our opinion based on the intended layout of Durkee Street or the conceptual layout of Durkee Street. More, it adds a little bit more legitimacy to that work. And chances are it's going to be that way because you don't have a lot of other options in a limited space.
So
And I
Rick,
think we
this
all
is,
understand
oh, sorry, Rick, this is Turner.
Turner.
How are you, man? So the site plan, as we're looking at it, inside the borders of the property, really is done in exclusion to Durkee Street. Whether or not Durkee Street gets modified to one way, what you're looking at works. And I understand your concern with parallel parking, but that really has no effect on our site. If that gets done or not, what's inside the boundaries of this site will work. And the rest of that is shown really because that's the intent of the city. If we didn't show it, then we'd be blasted for not showing the future intent of the city. So it's shown for coordination purposes because that is the intent and that's what was analyzed in the DGIS. But that's going to get designed through a full vetted design process to address all those concerns you have. And everything inside the boundaries of this site works now with Durkee two-way, and it works now with Durkee one-way.
And it's also, I would add that, it's incumbent upon Saratoga Associates now to design Durkee Street in accordance with what you approve here. No different than, future projects in the city have to mold around what's existing at the time. So the Durkee Street design, as it gets designed, will mold around the approved site plan.
And I can understand all of what you said, except for the last part of what Turner said, because I was froze. But when you identify diagonal parking on your property that's part of the street, it kind of makes it part of the site plan. When you identify turning radiuses out of your parking lots onto the public street, and you're even illustrating the turning radiuses, it kind of makes it part of the whole layout in traffic flow. So I know what you're saying. I'm not asking for us to have the authority, but at least conceptually, if we can't say this is the conceptual design of Durkee Street, we intend it to flow in the manner that we demonstrate, with the ability to make changes that are compliant with DOT standards. I get that and I can understand that, but I don't think we can just ignore that Durkee Street exists. That's
Dean,
the only point I'm making.
Dean, can we add some language to the resolution that this board is approving this plan based on a conceptual design of Durkee Street?
My concern is that word design. It seems to be more an illustration than to me, design is a term of art where an engineer's put a stamp on it, and we haven't yet reached that stage yet.
But I think maybe it takes the pressure off the board that they're not approving Durkee Street as one way or two way or saying which way is better. It's just saying the plan that we saw was based on a concept, and we approved that. If any changes are made to that impact the site plan, they'd have to come back to the board.
I personally like the term illustration. I think that's exactly what it is, and it's consistent with what Turner was identifying. It's there to show in its illustrated form the intent of turning radiuses, intended parking, all those things are all part of the illustration.
So then we really don't have a final approval until this is designed. Therefore, our project is further stalled. Am I understanding this correctly?
In my opinion, as long as it's consistent with the illustration, with the components, it's exactly what we've been asked to vote on.
I've got a quick question. The plans that we have seen to date, the illustrations, if you will, about Durkee Street, do they comply with DOT?
I don't think we have that level of detail right now. Maybe Matt can speak to that, but I don't believe we have that level of detail from Saratoga Associates. I believe this was an illustration only for the purposes of Prime being able to show ingress, egress, and traffic flow.
So let's say we want to apply for a building permit in 2 weeks. And this design takes 1.5 years to get through the process. We're supposed to wait around another 1.5 years to do our project?
I don't think this delays the process. I just think it's additional language in the resolution.
Well, I don't see how that's not going to delay our project.
That's not how I interpret it from Rick. I mean,
Me neither.
I guess what I took, and I think you made a good point, Rick, is that the whole cart before the horse. I mean, we are approving a site plan, and then they're going to design Durkee Street based on that. So whatever we approve for a site plan, they will design Durkee Street.
Correct.
So we inadvertently have a domino effect into how Durkee Street gets designed. So there is a piece to that where I think to cover the planning board, we can make, it's not even I wouldn't even call it a condition of approval. I think it's just a statement that we are basing our decision, approval or denial, whatever it is, on a site plan with an illustration of Durkee Street.
And what if
Yes, here would be my, well, here's my only point is that Prime was asked to show Durkee Street as one way because that was what was analyzed in the DGIS, and that's the intent of the city. And in my opinion, Prime shouldn't be punished unduly for doing that when in fact our design works either way. If Durkee Street goes one way, it works. If Durkee Street stays the way it is, it works. And, there shouldn't be undue burden put on Prime for showing Durkee Street the way we were asked to show it, which in my opinion is appropriate. But, I think we're getting really wrapped around the axle over, in my opinion, really nothing.
Yeah, I don't see how this is not going to affect our project and not delay our project. If we have our now approved project, something is now going to have detailed engineering done on Durkee Street. That detailed engineering that's done on Durkee Street is going to take into account our project and make sure that it's going to be designed in accordance to engineering standards, practices, DOT requirements, etc. That has to be done. So it's either going to stay the way it is, or it's going to get done, and it has to be designed to a certain standard. If we now have to come back through this whole process again, because that changes, because the detailed engineering hasn't been done, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I
think it's
Rick, in all honesty, it's not that difficult. I think the good news, no pun intended, but we actually have the horse before the cart, because whoever's designing Durkee now knows our circumstance and what our needs are in terms of site access. So that's a good thing in terms of how the process evolves. And it's a very typical process. In fact, it's probably less common than the converse, where we inherit a circumstance, maybe in terms of a curb cut, for instance, or traffic flow, whatever, that dictates how we design the site. So in this case, we have an opportunity to actually shape in terms of curb cut, where we want that to occur and who accesses that curb cut. And as Turner said, beyond that, it really doesn't matter unless Durkee Street goes away entirely. It really doesn't matter what the resolution is in terms of direction or parking. So I think,
and also maybe I'm misunderstanding something as well, but planning board's going to be involved in the city and the fire safety and all the other agencies in the design of Durkee Street. Am I missing something there?
We are not going to be involved.
Okay, so the planning board. So Rick, that's where I'm misunderstanding. So, but that has to go through an process, and that approval process has to take into account our plan, approval process of some sort, and it has to be designed with the correct fire safety, the correct turning radiuses, et cetera. So it's not like they're just going to design something and it's not going to be scrutinized. And so maybe somebody can explain the process from here to me a little bit more so I understand.
So I think probably the best way to explain it, and just because I'm hearing the planning board wanting some cover, and maybe it can be addressed with a whereas clause, but it is an identification that the entity or the agency involved with determining the design of Durkee Street must consider the approved site plan as approved by the planning board in making their determination. So that is the city council. Now, the environmental impacts and the traffic impacts of Durkee being a one-way street, that's already been evaluated. That was evaluated in the generic environmental impact statement. That's the beauty of the generic environmental impact statement, because it reviews the entire project as a whole. Durkee Street going one way, prime site plan, so forth and so on. And then after the generic environmental impact statement is complete, it goes to the involved agencies for their determination. So we're just following the sequence of events per the GEIS. The GEIS should allow you to kind of relax these concerns a little bit, because taking Durkee Street one way has been evaluated. And Turner just said it works both ways. So maybe it's a statement and a whereas clause in the resolution that says the approved site plan has been approved. And, we recognize that Durkee Street will be designed to facilitate the approved site plan, something of that nature.
That makes sense, Charlie. We're all involved in this same process with different challenges and charges that we're responsible for. Approve of a special use permit, a site plan. It's all based on safety, workability. I don't think it's fair that, maybe I'm misinterpreting something, but we do have to consider public safety when it comes to, site plans, traffic, other things such as that. Even though we don't have approval rights, we do have and have been charged with making this a safe, workable site. And that's all we're trying to do. We want to make certain that the decision that we make is going to be consistent with the safety features that you've identified when you put this plan together. You've got some very talented people. All I'm saying is we can't disregard that that street exists for the very same reasons you designed your site. We have to take consideration the public safety, the neighborhood safety. We can't disregard that, and I frankly will not.
And I think the board might consider that whereas clause that I had mentioned, recognizing that the GEIS does evaluate Durkee Street going one way, and that the design of Durkee Street, should contemplate the approved site plan.
I agree with that.
We can add that language, Rick.
Yeah, we're taking each other's concerns and utilizing them with the respect that they both deserve.
How the process was supposed to work.
Exactly. Sometimes it's difficult to articulate those things, but
you got that right.
So
Thank you. That sounds like a good solution. Thank you.
So we'll be in a little bit, I think at some point, we'll be getting to going through those resolutions and with Dean, and we can add it at that point, and we'll be able to see it on the screen and kind of approve exactly how we want it to read.
Yep. And Derek, as we've been talking, I'm trying to sketch out how that's going to read. So when we get to that point, I can offer that.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have more questions about the 16 spaces or the site plan or PUD, minor subdivision? Okay. Then I guess what we'll want to do next is start to go through the finding statements and the resolutions and get those fine-tuned.
Yep.
How we want them to read. One quick thing before I forget, just so I mention it during the meeting on record, I did receive an email. Marissa and I both received an email from Ron Nolan, ZBA chair, and just questions about the 16 spaces and their conditions. And I reviewed I read the email, I reviewed the conditions that the ZBA put on their application or on their approval. And after looking at everything that we have in front of us for the new 16 spaces that were added, it all seems to be in line with what that condition of approval was. So I'll just kind of leave that at that. It looks to be adequate. So so at this point, I guess, unless anything else, we can move forward, Dean Schneller, with starting to look through those finding statements and resolutions.
Hey, Derek, is Charlie's letter part of the record? I didn't get a chance to read it. I got it pretty late.
Yeah, me too. I didn't read it fully, but I assumed it was. But Dean, how are we to include that, or is it already part of the record?
Yeah, if it's from the applicant, it's going to be part of the record. I personally have not had a chance to see it yet, so I don't know what the content says. But if the applicant submitted it, then yeah, it's going to be part of the record.
Okay, can we,
Charlie, summarize?
can we read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, do you want to just take us through it real quick?
Sure, I'll summarize it. It was a blur of 2.5 hours this morning putting it together. But and Dean, I thought I emailed it to you, but I'll shoot it to you if I didn't. Basically, we understand the way I understood the ZBA meeting, and we tried to flesh it out at the ZBA meeting. They required us to have all 92 parking spaces made available to the public. However, the plans that they reviewed and essentially approved only showed 76 parking spaces available to the public. So that was a condition of their approval. Come up with more parking spaces so all 92 can be made available to the public. Then there was another condition of approval that said whatever the plan, essentially, whatever the planning board approves, that approval has to be consistent with the ZBA approval conditions, meaning all 92 spaces have to be made available to the public. At the meeting, I asked, well, let's flesh that out a little bit because it's kind of vague. What does consistent mean? And initially, I provided, this morning, I watched the video again from the meeting and provided quotes from the ZBA chair and the ZBA attorney that initially said, if you can come up with all the parking for the PUD within your building, that's consistent, right? Because you're then dedicating all 92 spaces to the public. Then the ZBA attorney said, you know, even if the planning board changes the PUD alternate parking calculation, because that's in their purview, then that would also be consistent. But then the chairman raised a concern that, well, if you reduce the PUD alternate parking calculation, that means that some people are inherently going to come to Prime's site and use those 92 spaces, meaning they're not really fully then available for members of the public. So when we went back to the drawing board, I said to our team, we need to find a way to come up with the parking spaces without reducing the alternate parking calculation that you guys have been considering. So what we did was provide 16 additional spaces in the building. The alternate parking calculation maintains the same. The concern that the ZBA chair raised about the farmers market building was that if they reduce the alternate parking calculation, which we're not, then people are going to use those 92 spaces when they go and visit the farmers market building. That concern doesn't apply anymore because we're not reducing the alternate parking calculation. We are providing the amount of off-street parking required for our building and for the farmers market building within our lot or within our building. So we hope to go back to the ZBA and they find that that was consistent. But the reason why I offered the letter today was to show the board, if they didn't watch the meeting, exactly what happened at the meeting and where those concerns came up and in what context those concerns came up. Because it was a little bit of a vague resolution, so we were able to flesh it out to try to figure out exactly what the ZBA was looking for. I hope some of that made sense.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Okay.
And again, we're not here to just approve something because the ZBA did or in a certain way, but after looking through everything, the way the plans were changed, the 16 spaces were added, which was explicitly, written out in the condition of approval with the ZBA. So it seemed to be appropriate with the way things are showing now in the plan as it is.
Just a point of clarification, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
You identified the alternate. That's to mean the alternate method of calculation?
Yeah, the alternate method of calculation that we've kind of been evaluating for the last year, that's not changing.
Okay, because we a similar term when it comes to winter parking in that parking lot, where you have alternate areas of parking because of snow removal and those strategies of cleaning up in the winter time. So
yeah, nope, this is just the PUD calculation.
Yeah,
has not changed.
Rick, and that brings up something else that we had talked about at some point in the past, that to just maybe in the resolution distinguish the difference between the plan complies with the alternate parking calculation, which is allowed in a PUD, rather than complying with the actual parking demand shown in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if we need to reference it specifically, but this has been accepted by the building inspector and he's charged with a compliance. So I think we need to phrase it that we're consistent with his approval in accepting the alternate method of calculation.
I believe that's in the PUD resolution.
Okay.
I thought it was, but it's good to bring it back up. We need a lot of refreshing at times.
Yeah, we'll hit on those as we go through here with Dean. Okay. So if we're ready to go with Dean with the finding statements and resolutions.
Sure.
Not speak up.
Everyone ready to proceed? Okay. So some good news here. I think we can kill the veritable two birds with one stone with respect to the finding statement, to the extent that the finding statement is a facsimile for the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision. And our resolution for potential approval of that finding statement references that it would be approving that for the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision. So the two birds with one stone would just be to be able to accomplish both of those tasks in one review, if that's makes sense for everyone. And then if that is approved, then we can move to the actual resolutions for the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision.
Do we have that in the form that, what did you call it? Where you put it up on the display?
Yeah.
The share screen. Yep.
Shared screen, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I was going to ask if Milena or whoever's running the controls could throw up the draft finding statement.
So Dean, you're saying.
Do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
Can you do it, Milena?
I can.
So we'll start with the PUD and minor.
The finding statement for the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision is one and the same.
And the resolution for the PUD.
For the approval for the finding statement covers both the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision. So rather than go through two processes, we've combined those two to one process for the seeker review.
Can I ask Mark if he's good with that?
Me, Mark Shackner?
Yes.
Totally appropriate.
And so just so everyone understands, there is a finding statement for the PUD subdivision. There's a finding statement for the minor subdivision, but they are
merged, for all purposes, merged into one. Yeah. And
there is also a resolution to approve the finding statement, correct, Dean?
That resolution does have language saying it approves it for the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision. The resolution covers both.
And then there is a separate resolution though for each as approving the PUD and the minor sub.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we have been through this document, not in its current form because it's been in draft form and at least until last night, but we did go through a substantially similar version this fall through two successive meetings, which were late into the evening, where we did go line by line. We did receive really valuable comments from this board, and those comments were implemented. So I intend to do an overview rather than go line by line here, unless someone tells me otherwise. So, oh, sorry, Dirk, yeah.
Sorry, just so everyone else knows, I think they already do, but as we made changes, or as we had meetings to review these and made changes and then discuss them over the last however many months, I have been reviewing them and coordinating with Milena to, implement the changes and check them and all of that. So there's that piece of it that I've done, but I think definitely we should have Dean just take us through, at least, an overview of what's in there. And then if it jogs someone's memory about something, we can specifically drill down and look at it. If you want to go specifically to something, just let us know. And if you want Dean to slow down or move or change something, just speak up, and we'll kind of take it that way.
So by all means, this is the board's document. So just for the sake of efficiency, I don't want to cut anyone off. If we need to take a deep dive, then by all means, we're going to do that. And also, big picture, the Common Council has adopted its own finding statement and then a subsequent amended finding statement. So one option this board could have had would have been to just wholly adopt what the Common Council did. Rather than do that, though, this board took a project-specific approach, which allows it to kind of take a more nuanced look at the environmental review with respect to the specific project. Now, when I say project, I don't want to use that term too loosely. For our purposes right now, I'm describing the project as the minor subdivision and the PUD subdivision. Okay, so
Dean, one more thing. And just the other things we've been talking about as far as, you know, whereas clauses and those things, those, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, but those would just pretty much apply to the resolutions and not necessarily the finding statements.
I don't understand your question.
So when we were talking about maybe adding a clause.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, those would be the resolutions, yes.
So right now, this is just finding statement.
Yep. Okay, so I think Melena's been scrolling down. The first couple pages were just describing all of the downtown area improvement projects, which includes this development on the Durkee Street lot. So now we're looking at some secure classifications and just relevant dates as to when the Common Council as lead agency took certain steps. Sorry, can you slow down a tiny bit, Melena?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. So again, we're making this seeker review specific to the Durkee projects. And again, for our purposes right now, it's a subdivision approvals. Okay. Okay, so topic A just talks about project purpose and need. Again, we touched on this during our prior meeting. Is any questions? How quickly or how much detail do you guys want to go into? Has everyone had a chance to look this over? And okay, I'm seeing some heads nodded. Marissa, I know you had some really valuable comments previously. Are you okay with everything so far?
I'm just listening in. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay.
Kate, I did review the document prior to the meeting.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, so we've been through this again for the past year. So topic A was talking about the generic project with a broad overview. Now we're getting into specific findings concerning environmental impacts. One of the first criteria is land use, community character, zoning, and public policy. And we go through specific findings that the proposed action, which again is the minor subdivision and PUD application, will benefit the community, is consistent with various community plans, and will not have a negative impact for the reasons that A, B, and C and subsequent letters lay out, which is that the boundaries will allow for redevelopment of the project site, which fits within the context of the general character of the surrounding area. The project is within the city's downtown core, which is a good area for redevelopment with a commercial / residential component. C's talking about the topography of the site, how there is a slight slope, and that the boundaries of the PUD or the lot lines of the PUD will not cause any adverse consequences. We can keep scrolling down. We cited out of as a request from some of these board members to cite the specific language within the code. So we added those sections so that it's well spelled out and well documented. Okay, we're still within the concept of the character, whether an open surface parking lot is within character and these buildings are within character, including the building materials and colors. There's gonna be some more detail when we get into the site plan review, but there were some really solid comments from this board, which led to some mitigation by the applicant with respect to the building materials and the architectural designs. There's language referencing that this was reviewed by New York State Office of Historic Preservation and found to be not resulting in any adverse impacts. There's language regarding the building height. Again, that it's within the range of other buildings within the downtown area. Language regarding the Riverwalk and its function, how it's going to provide better access as currently exists for the public to use this city retained waterfront. And again, that this waterfront is consistent with planning that the city's completed over the past years. There's other language describing the pedestrian path, which cuts through the project site, which is going to improve and encourage access along the Riverwalk, as well as connecting with the Arts Park, the Betty Little's Arts Park, which is across the way from Durkee Street. Okay. More language regarding some planning. I'm not going to read through all these, but it talks about our LWRP, our Brownfield Opportunity Plan, our Comprehensive Plan, our Downtown Waterfront Economic Enhancement Strategy, and the additional parking, or the parking which is going to be developed on site. So the final, all of that language leads to conclusion that for the reasons stated above, this overall project and specifically the minor subdivision and PUD approvals will not have a significant adverse impact on land use, community character, zoning, or public policy, and therefore no mitigations necessary. We're good to move on to section 2. Yep. Okay, aquatic and natural resources. This is a summary of the Saranac River's classification and the fact that this project is well above the base flood elevation, and therefore there's not any adverse impacts expected or going to result as this subdivision. There wasn't much attention on this when we reviewed it line by line a couple months ago. Okay. Again, the conclusion is based on the aquatic or natural resources that there's no mitigation necessary. Similarly, municipal utilities did not receive much attention. I do see a really minor typo, just as we're looking at it right now, where we have A, then A again, unless I'm misreading that. So little things like that we can clean up if the board can authorize either Derek or myself or Milena just to clean up typographical.
Yeah, I was just gonna just make that statement.
No, nothing substantive.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right, so, or Milena can do it on the fly if she's quick enough. So.
No.
And if something's, yeah, this should be the final version, obviously. So.
Okay. In any event, municipal utilities again didn't receive much attention when we reviewed it several months ago, but we do have will serve letters from the MLD, and any stormwater runoff has to comply with SWIP requirements, and DPW also provided a will serve letter, as did the Environmental Services Department for sewage treatment and provision of water. Okay. Again, so there's a conclusion at the end of the section, which determines there is no mitigation necessary based on the ability for the city to absorb this site with respect to its utilities. Parking did receive a little more attention when we reviewed it and has received some more attention today. This reflects the parking calculations, the amount of parking calculations that are required for the site. There's reference to the GEIS, which studied this in detail, which made some conclusions that Matt Miller referred to previously about the capacity for the SAD, that there's sufficient capacity within the SAD, and also reflects that there's going to be 92 spaces remaining available to the public, which is an increased number following the ZBA's conditioned approval. Okay. This is just how those numbers were reached, and also references the building inspector's determination to accept this alternate calculation, which Milena is highlighting right there. Okay, so again, the conclusion at the end of the section is that there will not be any significant adverse impact on parking, and therefore no further mitigation is necessary. Section 5 discusses fiscal and economic conditions. It's currently an exempt site. If and when the site is developed and conveyed to a private company, it will result in some taxable status, dependent, of course, on the terms of the pilot agreement, which has not yet been approved, but should have a conclusion by early February. Okay, and there's also some language just acknowledging that we're hopefully on the tail end of a global pandemic, but that this project itself is not going to be impacted to the extent that the project will not proceed because of that pandemic. We had some discussion about, whether you can speculate what will this pandemic do to this project, and you can't speculate in an environmental analysis. So therefore it was acknowledged, but also you can't study something so unknown, I guess, so abstract. But the conclusion is that that these approvals will not have an adverse impact on the fiscal or economic conditions, and therefore no mitigation is necessary. Historic and cultural resources, we touched on briefly. The New York State Historic Preservation Office, as well as another consultant, issued a report or response letter determining that it will not have any adverse impact, and therefore based on those reports, no mitigation is necessary. Environmental contamination. So this site is a brownfield site, and there's some reference to the environmental easements or other environmental documents which may impact this site. So we touched on that. And so long as this development is in conformance with any easements on record or any other controls, then, and so long as they comply with all DEC requirements, there's not any mitigation necessary. Recreation and open space. Turner previously discussed, and this board's well aware that this the proposed development is not going to exceed the open, or is going to be within the open space requirements, and which includes the various green spaces on site. Okay, based on that compliance with open space requirements, there's no mitigation necessary. Visual resources, again, talks about the downtown area as well as the design of the building. Again, there were some valuable comments made by this board, which the applicant, or which Prime did accept and implement. And based on the final design, with respect to the size and structure and building materials, there's no mitigation necessary. Okay, so that's the meat of this document, and we are referring back to the Common Council Statement of Findings, which also issued a determination that it will not, these downtown area projects will not create any significant adverse environmental impacts or otherwise avoid or minimizes those impacts to the extent practicable. And so this board does, to some extent, concur and adopt that finding, unless we have a different finding, which this different finding would control here. So the final conclusion, or the final piece, is a certification, and it's acknowledging that this board has considered all these relevant impacts, it has weighed and balanced the impacts as compared to the social and economic and other considerations for the project, that we followed the code, rules, and regulations, and that essentially the balancing was complete and the environmental review is complete. So that's the document in a 10-minute version. Does anyone have any questions? Does it make sense? And again, this is specific to the minor and PUD subdivision. Okay, I don't know if I'm seeing, no, any reaction, or is this?
Nope, looks like.
Okay, and it fits with what recommended changes were asked for and what the prior review showed?
Yeah, everything that I had noted was changed.
Okay. So with nothing else, I would ask Milena to pull up the resolutions, and then if we could actually I don't know, Derek, you want to read them or read the resolution, which covers again, both minor and PUD subdivisions?
Sure.
Dean, can I
Go
ask
ahead,
you
Rick.
one other
Sure.
question, please?
Sure.
We spoke a few meetings ago about identifying staff's recommendations and staff's representations as that of the city, so just to add that extra authority to the staff's comment period or comments throughout the process. Is this the appropriate place to identify that? We did identify within this document that if you went back down to the end, it identifies the staff's representation. Just want to make sure that this document reflects that this is representation of the city of Plattsburgh and not a department within the city, kind of like making it binding by the city to uphold the opinions, the facts that have been presented in the application by staff as representing that of the city.
Well, I've always had trouble kind of fully being able to articulate exactly what you're asking for, but I would suggest that the resolutions themselves are the more appropriate forum to add a condition of approval or some kind of statement like that. But I would go back to what I said when we had the previous discussion, that if you want a condition, it needs to be specific. I don't like the idea of just a generic, this project will comply with any representations, because if that were challenged or if that were need to be interpreted, we would need some more guidance there. So I don't think this is appropriate. It would be in the resolution, but we would need to specify that out or anyway, Mark, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I'm off base, Rick, tell me. I wasn't interpreting your comment necessarily as suggesting a separate condition or even a heightened condition. I was interpreting your comment or question as more like, if there are places in the documents that reference staff recommendations, that the planning board is hereby adopting those staff recommendations. Is that where you're headed or not really?
That's exactly where I'm heading. I want to, I've always felt that the city of Plattsburgh is the applicant, which we know them to be the elected officials, in that their representation is that of a department that are under the city, and we want what they've represented to be binding by the elected officials to this application. So yes, you're right, Mark.
So Rick, I think Melena, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have language in the resolutions specifically addressing that, saying that recommendations by staff will and have and will be implemented.
Correct.
Melena, is that? Yeah. Okay.
We do, correct.
So as long as it's in there, I want it to reflect that language in the document. So if you have it there, that's good.
Yes, thank you, Rick. And I did have that on my notes for I think it's appropriate to have them just in the resolution. And this is not to confuse, but this is a resolution to adopt the finding statement. It's not the resolution to approve the PUD. I think that's where, once we get there, we can look at what Melena's already written in there for each of the three resolutions and then take it from there.
Okay.
So this one at this point, so we don't get confused, but this is the resolution that is adopting the seeker finding statements for the PUD and the minor subdivision, because the finding statements are the same for both. So essentially what Dean just took us through, this is just a separate resolution to approve that finding statement. It's not to approve the PUD or the minor subdivision.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess what I'll do is I'll read through the resolution. If there's any discussion, we can have it at the end. And then if someone wants to move to vote, make a move to vote, we can vote on this resolution to adopt the finding statements. Okay, so this is resolution for 2019-24 and 2019-11, adopting SECRA finding statement for City of Plattsburgh downtown area improvement projects, minor subdivision and plan unit development applications. January 12th, 2020. Resolved, the City of Plattsburgh Planning Board adopts the finding statement dated January 12th.
Yep. Derek, I apologize for interrupting. Just remember, all these dates have to become 2021.
Oh, you're right. Thank you.
Melena's on it.
Okay. Adopts the finding statement dated January 12th, 2021 for the City of Plattsburgh downtown area improvement projects, specifically for the minor subdivision approval and PUD subdivision approval actions associated with the Durkee Lot mixed-use development prepared pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and Part 617 of the implementing regulations. And be it further resolved that the planning board authorizes its presiding chairman to certify the finding statement. And be it further resolved that the planning board instructs the office of the city's building inspector to provide all notices necessary under SECRA. And be it further resolved that the planning board directs that a copy of this resolution shall be filed immediately with the City of Plattsburgh city clerk and sent to the project sponsor. Okay, so to approve the finding statement for the PUD subdivision and minor subdivision, does anyone make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion, Derek.
Okay, motion by Rick,
I'll second.
second by Loretta. So as far as voting goes, might as well just do the chat voting now. I mean, that's if the planning board wants to do that, but just so we can,
Just a quick, just ask any discussion on that motion.
oh, sorry.
And then after discussion, you can move to a vote.
Okay. Any discussion on this resolution? Or motion?
Does the chat go to Milena or does the chat go to Shalice?
I believe Shalice, if she's still on.
I'm here.
So okay, so let's first, is everyone okay with voting that way? That was offered up by Marissa, and it's what the ZBA had done and has been doing, but not that there's any pressure for anyone to vote anyway, but this would allow everyone to vote at the same time anonymously, not anonymously, but no one can see what they vote except Shalice, which she then takes in and then she reads them aloud for each person and then they will verify that that was their vote. So if we're all good with that, we can do that. So what you do is you go down to the bottom of your screen, you hit chat, and it should show that if you want to just choose Shalice. So if you can see that, there's a little drop down next to 2.
And is the enter key the send?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes, it is.
So a yes would be in favor of the motion. A no would be disapproving the motion.
You got it, Rick?
Okay, so I have all 5 votes.
Okay.
Loretta is a yes.
So Loretta just confirmed that.
I confirm that that's my vote.
Marissa is a no.
I confirm that is my vote.
Derek is a yes.
Yes.
Reg is a yes.
Confirm, yes.
And Rick is a yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, so now having completed the seeker, we can move on to the resolution for the minor subdivision. Pretty straightforward. The city is seeking to subdivide off the Broad Street portion of the existing lot. It's existing 5.3 acre lot. It would be, if subdivision's approved, it would result in a 0.72 acre parcel on the Broad Street side, and then a 4.66 acre parcel on the Durkee side. Okay, I'm just
And
looking.
then-
Oh, sorry. Yep.
I was just gonna say, the PUD will be the next thing where you take out the site for Prime, correct?
Yeah, and also draw some lot lines within that site to retain the city waterfront and clean up the edges, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
Okay. So fairly straightforward. This is a very discrete portion of the larger project. So it's straightforward. Frankly, it's a de facto subdivision because to the extent that Broad Street already bisects the parcel. But just to make it clear, because the deed does encompass both parcels, it was recommended that we just complete the subdivision just to carve it off officially, and so it can be on record. Any questions on the resolution itself? Seeing none, I don't necessarily think it's necessary for everyone or for Derek to read everything. If you want, you can entertain a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution, Derek.
Okay. Just before that, I want to make sure we get, Melena, can you take us to that comment about representations by city staff? Is that in this one?
It may not have made this one because again, it's so straightforward. Once we get into the POD,
Yeah.
This will be carved out of the POD if and when it's accomplished. So yeah, there's really not much other than drawing a line on the subdivision plat.
Correct. For the minor subdivision, we did not include the language that Rick suggested because like Dean said, this was just a simple minor subdivision.
Okay. I'm okay with that. So I'm okay with not reading the whole thing too. I've already gone through it, but so Dean, you said for me to make a motion to waive that?
I said you can entertain a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution or move the motion. That would accomplish both at once.
Okay, so then do I have a motion to waive the reading of the resolution verbatim?
And move the motion.
And move the motion.
Move the resolution.
I'll make the motion to waive the reading of the resolution and move to voting on the resolution.
Okay, motion by Reg,
I'll second.
second by Loretta. So,
Any discussion?
any discussion?
Shh.
Okay, then you can submit your vote via chat to Shalice.
I think I'm missing one. Oh, there we go. Okay. We have Derek as a yes.
Yes.
Rick is a yes.
Yes.
Loretta is a yes.
Yes.
Marissa is a no.
Yes, I said no.
And Reg is a yes.
Reg, you're muted.
Had a
There you
little
go.
technical problem. Yes.
Right, motion carries.
Dean, you're muted.
Now we can move on to the PUD subdivision. We've already completed the seeker findings, so we can turn right to the substantive resolution.
Okay. Yeah. So you want to just pull, Melina will pull that up for us.
Okay, it looks like Melena's just typing 2021 into it. So similar process. I can review the resolution itself, which again has been a work in progress till this date. So absent any other direction, we'll just walk through it. Okay. So actually, Melena, can you just, can you pull up the site plan just real quick and just do a 2-second review of the site plan for the PUD subdivision?
Okay. So the PUD subdivision, as you know, is the subsequent and further subdivision of the Durkee Street parking lot into 2 lots. Lot 2B will be conveyed to Prime for their development. Lot 2A will be retained by the city. That is the ICV building, the associated parking, and all of the waterfront for the Riverwalk. In addition to the board approving the subdivision of that lot, they're also approving all of the deviations within the PUD that are necessary for the Prime site plan. And here is a PUD deviation table. This hasn't really changed since the last time you guys saw this. The deviations the project are requesting are side setbacks, rear setbacks, a height deviation, a parking lot aisle width deviation, and obviously, as we've gone over multiple times, the parking deviation. The deviations requested for the setbacks, most of those are because of the pre-existing conditions of the site. So the farmer's market building and the parking lot aisle width, they're asking for deviation of 2 feet and 4 feet within the on-site parking. And the parking deviation, they're utilizing an alternate parking calculation based on another site in Saratoga that they found is successful. So they're requesting 217 spaces instead of the 307 that are required, and they're providing 92 public parking spaces. Is that good, Dean, or do you want more?
It's up to the board. Yeah.
Does the board have any questions about the PUD subdivision?
Can you blow that up a little bit? It's difficult to see it.
Maybe. Why is it not letting me zoom in on this? There we go. Is there a specific section of the table you'd like to look at, Rick?
No, I just wanted to review it from
Or the
top to
plan?
bottom. Yeah.
I'm zoomed in way too much now. Sorry, I guess I could type in here. So the subdivision plot itself, this is a survey that was completed by RMS. And they also included an inset map here with Prime site plan and Prime's zoning table to the right to show that the subdivision is associated with this site plan. So all of the information for the PUD subdivision is in a zoning table on the plat, and then also there's an inset table with the Prime site plan and their bulk area calculations for that site plan. So they're all on one plat. And this plat serves as both the minor subdivision plat and the PUD subdivision plat, which will be filed with the county. And actually, that brings up a good point. This inset map with the Prime site plan is the one previous to the January 7th submittal. So we'll have to have RMS update this inset map with the January 7th map from Prime and the table, the associated table with the new parking calculations.
And Dean, a couple of questions while we're looking at that. Just a couple notes I had that were concerns just about adding maybe language to the resolution. And I don't know if they're appropriate just for the site plan or for the site plan and the PUD. But first, that one statement we were talking about earlier about Durkee Street, does that have enough to do with that, the PUD subdivision, or just the site plan?
I think it would be more appropriate for the site plan because that's specific to kind of the ingress egress. And I mean, there is some crossover. So if anyone feels strongly, I could be persuaded otherwise, but I think it seems to make more sense for the site plan itself. Again, because the limited, there's a lot of components to this, to the criteria, but the actual takeaway is it's drawing lines on a map for our purposes here.
Right. Okay. And then there was I don't know if Milena put it in or not. I didn't. I think it was mentioned in the last meeting, but something to the effect, I think, Rick, you guys were talking about Durkee Street easement encroachment. Does that jog your memory, Milena or Rick?
If we scroll down to the conditions at the very bottom, Milena.
Yep. Sorry, this is a really long resolution.
Yeah, I think we should add easements in G. We do have that in the site plan resolution, but we should probably add that to this one as well.
4G.
4G, yep. All required easements, shared use, and parking agreements. Derek, anything else?
So should we put or I guess, can we look at what we talked about earlier about the distinguishing the difference between complying with the alternate parking calculation versus the actual zoning ordinance's parking demand? If that's in here, it might just be in the site plan.
I believe it's in here too.
Okay.
So we have this section. Yeah, this whole section up here talks about the alternate parking calculation, the hamlet, how they came up with those numbers, et cetera, and what the zoning code requirement is, which is 307. The project is providing 217 based on the alternate parking calculation. In addition, they're providing 92 public parking spaces for a total of 309 off-street parking.
If you go back up to the middle of 17.
Yep.
Okay, so under the city zoning code, I was reading that. The required parking would be 307.
Yep.
However, as noted in seeker, the city's off-street parking have been up. Okay. The city has the ability within the PUD regulations to deviate from the zoning code's parking requirements.
It's funny because the zoning code requires 307. The project is providing 309. So it seems like they're providing more than they need to, which in reality, I guess they are, but we're not double counting those 92 public parking spaces.
Gotcha. So I think the way I read that, it states that zoning code is parking demand is one thing, and then we are allowed to and are using the alternate calculation.
Correct.
Is that to the extent that you were looking for, Rick?
Yeah, it does address it. I think going a couple paragraphs down really show.
You froze up. All right, you're back, Rick. What were you saying? A couple paragraphs down?
Oh, was I froze?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, where it says the planning board has reviewed the information submitted by Prime, the city's building inspector. I think that's the reference that we were making directly to the building inspector's letter.
Okay. Okay. And then, so if that's okay, I guess back down to the bottom would just be that overarching statement about representations made by city staff. So I don't know if Dean, you had something written on that.
I think we had touched on it, Melina. Can you scroll up where it talks about the conditions? Might be in the site plan approval.
Yeah, it's in the site plan resolution, not this one.
Okay. Do you want to mirror that language into this one?
I can. Let me stop sharing and I'll pull that one up and see what we have. God, I have so much stuff open now. All right.
It's like the top of page 21 under the first be it further resolved of the site plan resolution.
That's what this is.
That was on my own screen. There you go. There, higher up. Let's scroll up a little bit. Right there.
You mean
yeah.
Concur with the said items and recommendations contained in the said community development department's list of recommendations?
That's just a reference to the review comments that I compile every month for you guys. There was additional language added down here in the be it further resolved, but subject to the applicant complying with any requirements of the planning board, noted in the planning board resolution discussion, which have been agreed upon by the applicant. Let me look up something else. Oops, wrong one. Sorry, I'm just looking at a different version of this, an older version. Do we remember when that was that Rick asked us to add that language?
Yeah, we've just been talking about it at least last month, if not maybe 1 month before, but
I'm
December.
looking.
I don't know if we did add it ever.
I sent it around to everybody at one point to review, but it's not in this version that I have in front of me.
No, I think we were just talking about it, and then Dean had been putting something together.
I mean, we can make up something right now if you guys think that would be better anyway.
That's what I thought. Dean, had you started to write something when we were talking about this earlier?
No, that was on the Durkee Street. I was sketching something out based on the Durkee, the design of Durkee Street.
Yeah, I mean, we can add it to the bottom, I think, in.
Mark, do you have suggested language?
No, I have a question now. If we're still on the same thing, Rick, you'll tell us if not, that you asked the question about a few minutes ago. I thought we agreed that you weren't suggesting it as an additional condition, just a confirmation of adoption of the staff recommendations. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, that's the intent, that the city being the applicant, all representation made on the city's behalf by city departments and staff is there for the position of the city. I don't know.
And the planning board is and the planning board approval. Are you saying the planning board approval is adopting those city positions / recommendations, or conditioning? Maybe you are trying to make this a condition. I originally thought you were not suggesting it as a proposed condition.
Well, let me just put it on the table. I mentioned it earlier, but the city officials are elected officials, and our staff members are employees of the elected officials in the citizens of the city. So whatever representation they've made throughout the process for us to bring forth our vote, we want to make certain that it's understood that they represent the city, in that their presentations are what we're making our determinations on, where appropriate, I guess.
So I guess my reaction to that, for the board to think about it, and there's no magic to my reaction to it, but my reaction to that is I don't know that almost seems like that is true without need to write express language to that effect. In other words, when Milena or whomever makes a statement on behalf of the planning department or as a city planner, she's doing that in her official. I'm not picking on you, Milena, but she's doing that in her official role as a planner for the city of Plattsburgh. So I thought I originally understood your question / comment. Now I'm not 100% sure, but if I understand what you just said, which you prefaced with, let me put it on the table. To me, that's a given that neither needs nor really lends itself to easy affirmance, if that makes sense.
On the table is just open for discussion.
Yeah, no, I get that part.
Yeah.
And my 2 cents worth is, now that you've sort of explained it further, to me, it seems like a given that neither needs nor really lends itself to much explanation. But that's just my 2 cents. No magic to it.
Well, let me ask you this then, Mark. I'll use the downtown parking analysis that was done by a staff member of the community development office. They are in an official role in capacity of the city, but suppose the elected officials don't agree with what they presented. They are the applicant. And I guess it's just an open question, but what binds the city to that conclusion that was drawn by the staff members' parking analysis?
Well,
As
the short answer is what binds the city is your approval, among a number of other things. But the short answer is your approval binds it. If the city of Plattsburgh Common Council, City Council, and or other elected officials that you're making reference to have a problem with something you approve, they may, I guess, in theory, they could challenge your approval, or they could try to get a modification of your approval. But I think the glib answer, I don't mean it to be a glib answer, is what binds the city of Plattsburgh to those representations is it seems like if this board approves, they're incorporated into your approval.
Okay, I thought that it was stated a number of months back that if let me structure my thought here. If we take as a factor of approval consideration the testimony of a member of the Community Development Office, does that mean that the city is bound by that individual's comment on record? Or can they dispute it later?
If I might be able to help get past this hurdle, Rick. A lot of the things that you're talking about, those statements that were made by the development office and so forth, those were all part of the GEIS. And Mark, please weigh in if I misspeak. And to that extent, the GEIS, the Common Council, was the lead agency and adopted a finding statement. So they would be bound by their finding statement and the environmental record that's in the GEIS. So that is a layer, I think, of cover that you're looking for in how the city council is bound by these different reports and statements and comments. Most all of this is in the GEIS record. I actually would think 99, if not 100% is. They have issued a finding statement based on that record, and they're held to that record and the mitigating factors that are in that record.
Rick, I mean, are you, I guess I'm trying to boil it down. Are you just trying to make the point that the city is the applicant as well as the people who are advising us?
That
They're
is
one and the
correct.
same. Okay.
In that, what representations are made are the elected portion of city government. The legislative body is bound representations.
Yeah, and that's not it. It's not very typical that the applicant is also the preparer, I guess, right?
Correct.
So
Not as atypical as you might think, actually.
okay.
So
I don't think it's a condition we want. I think it's just a statement.
Right. Yeah. And coming full circle, I mean, there's no secret of what entity is the applicant for at least portions of the approvals that are sought. But remember, what Mr. Gottlieb said is largely true, but not 100% true, in that the finding statement that you've adopted specifically says in it, if I understand correctly, that to the extent that anything in your finding statement is different than what is in the Common Council's finding statement, as to your planning board approvals, what you've adopted will supersede. Am I misstating that, or isn't that part of the finding statement that you've adopted?
Correct.
Yeah.
So to that extent, not only are the elected officials bound by what they found in their SECRA findings themselves, but to the extent that the city is an applicant for portions of the overall project at issue, the applicant is still, regardless of the fact that it's the city of Plattsburgh in part, it's still bound by this board's determinations, even if some portion of this board's determination is contrary to what the city put in its GEIS because of your the supersession language that you've adopted. So I think, if I'm understanding your concern, Rick, I think it's well covered by your own decision that was just adopted.
Okay. As long as you feel that we're covered in that regard, and I'm fine with that.
Okay, I am too. I didn't have any other comments on this one.
Melanie, is this the site plan approval or the PUD subdivision?
This is the PUD subdivision.
Okay. Okay, any other comments before we kind of walk through it, or do you want me to expedite that walking through process?
Yeah, this is, yeah, I think Milena covered it. If you want to do a quick overview of it, and then I'll make a, I mean, I can move to waive reading the whole thing.
So we'll walk through it?
Yeah, if you want to go through it quickly.
Okay. So Melanie, can you just jump right to the top again, sir? All right, so again, this is, oh, no, this is site plan. Yeah, we got to go back to the
PUD.
PUD.
Not right now, buddy. Sorry. I have so much stuff open right now. I just need 1 second. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so this is the, again, just a rehash, we've already completed or certified the finding statement for this PUD subdivision, and now this is the substantive resolution with respect to that PUD subdivision. Whereas clauses are going to describe the project again. We've been through that in great detail. So I'm going to, we can scroll down past this. Next few sections provide more detail to the actual development proposal with respect to the square footage of the building and the residential units and parking spaces. Next few sections describe the project location within the city's downtown, as well as the applicable zoning code sections. Scrolling down, we describe the Saranac, the pedestrian access, which includes the Riverwalk and the pedestrian access over to the West Telcom Park. A few more paragraphs on the Riverwalk itself. Again, comparing it to what was previously or currently a dilapidated, inaccessible area, whereas the proposal is to have a more functional, improved waterfront access. Next few sections describe the seeker review, which we just culminated in the finding statement from a few minutes ago. But all these paragraphs kind of describe the council's role as lead agency, and then this board's role as an involved agency. Next few sections describe the public hearings, which did occur, as well as the compliance with the governor's executive orders in light or during the course of the pandemic, which those public hearings were in conformance with the governor's executive orders. Next few sections describe that there were some significant project changes after the first public hearing in the springtime, which resulted in the reopening and then closing of the public hearing in August, during the August meeting. Next two projects describe, or next two paragraphs describe the documents which were submitted, as well as the zoning board's review, which was concluded at the end of the year by unanimous approval of the two special use permits, one for first floor apartments, and then the second to approve the boundaries of the PUD with the condition of the 16 parking spaces being made available to the public, the additional 16 spaces. Next few sections just describe the other federal, state, and local agency review, including the historic office, as well as the city's various departments which have provided will-serve letters. Next document, or next paragraph, refers to what documents the planning board has reviewed, as well as the county planning board's determination on the site plan. Well, excuse me, on the PUD application, the county planning board did determine this was a local issue. They made a different determination for the site plan, but that'll be coming up in a few minutes. Next few paragraphs just describe some other permitting requirements under SWIP and some engineering consultants review for third-party review. Okay, next few documents paragraphs refer to the subdivision materials, including the deviation table, which Milena had highlighted previously. Okay, this is an affirmative resolution, which if granted would approve the PUD subdivision, which again, Milena walked through the site plan as well as the deviation table a few moments ago. In order to get there, there's numerous conditions set forth in the city code, starting with section 360.21, the grant of authority, and this lays out several criteria. Again, there's many, so we'll just walk through those. And the first one is just a generic determination that this procedure in the discretion of the board would benefit the city. To make that determination, it just recognizes this is an underutilized lot in the downtown area, which would benefit with new jobs, development, new residents, just common sense kind of benefits. Next few sections sorry, can you go up to 2? Next section describes that a PUD allows for more flexibility in design and land use, so you can have multiple uses and more flexibility with the construction and layout. Okay. Planning board has some control to establish conditions regarding ownership, use, and maintenance of the lands with respect to its approval, and a lot of those will be touched on later on in this resolution. Okay. Next section describes the minimum percentage of open space that's required within a PUD, and then the non-bold print demonstrates how it complies with that open space requirement. Next sections show, at least the subdivision plat, show the potential structures. Those will be described in more detail in the site plan review, but at least the layout of the structures are described on the plat. And it's noted that this is in the C Central Business Zoning District, which does permit a PUD. Okay, again, PUD has flexibility to the extent it allows a mixture of uses, which can be permitted as of right or by special use permit. And we already referenced that the ZBA did approve 2 special use permits. Okay, planning board shall follow the standards of the code, and as well as receive some opinions of the city planner and other city departments. So there's some, I guess, some other language that Rick was referring to previously. Okay, requires public access, which has access on 3 streets, Broad Street, Durkee Street, and Bridge Street, as well as frontage, or the city retained lot has frontage on the Saranac River. Okay, so now here are some more specific guidelines for review and approval of a PUD. Subsection 1 describes boundary line and internal street setback requirements. There originally was a proposal for the building, the proposed building to be closer to Bridge Street based on comments by the ZBA. That was pushed back. So there's a greater setback from the street, increasing the sidewalk width. And the ICV building has already been constructed for at least the past 15 or so years. So that's an existing building, but there's still a setback determination from that building itself. There's a minor deviation there. Okay. Okay, in order to approve these deviations, again, those are typically zoning board functions, but in a PUD context, the planning board is required to review the standards for a variance and determine whether it would protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community and character of the community. So those factors are all laid out, and it walks through the potential deviations for the new proposed building as well as the ICV existing structure, and walks through the criteria and whether those standards have been met or would have been met had it been a normal quote unquote variance. Again, those are the standards again that we just talked about. Okay. And keep scrolling unless someone has any questions as we go through these. This goes, sorry, Melena, pause for a second. Now we're into the parking deviation. Again, it's been an oft discussed issue. I don't want to repeat it unless anyone has any questions. Not seeing any. Okay. Okay. Again, whether there's going to be an undesirable change resulting from this development, and again, with respect to parking, if this resolution is adopted, the planning board would find that there's not an undesirable change in the character of the community or the neighboring properties. Again, the same area variance factors are reviewed, and there's evidence or determination provided. Okay, now we get into resolution language, or the resolve language. Okay, sorry, can you go to that first part? Okay, so this is specific to the proposed project. Any deviations within this PUD or approval is specific to this project. If the development is not pursued, abandoned, torn down, or significantly reconfigured, then those deviations would not run with the land, but would require further review by this or other boards. Okay, there's some basic requirements that the applicant will have to do if and when this resolution is adopted in order to file certain plats and plans within the city and county. Okay, after 4, we have further conditions of approval. A, that the project comply with all permit requirements. B, comply with DEC requirements. C, which is this approval will be subject to the approval of the SUP, which was granted by the ZBA. D, same thing. This one's with respect to the apartments on the first floor, whereas the first one was with the PUD boundaries. E, subject to the prior approval with respect to the minor subdivision. F, subject to the applicant providing all utility, parking, sidewalk, pedestrian access easements in a form approved by Corporation Council. Okay, so we did have that there. Sorry, Melena, I guess we can strike. Well, we can keep G too. We added that previously, but we did have it in F. G, subject to applicant providing all required easements, shared use, and parking agreements. And H, applicant complying with any other requirements noted by the planning board in its resolution discussion. And then again, subject to the filing of this final PUD subdivision plat within the county county's office. Okay, so that's it's a lengthy, comprehensive resolution. The goal is to show there was a careful analysis and some mitigation provided by the applicant. And with that, turn it back to Derek.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions about this resolution? Okay, with that, then I think we've gone through everything on that one. So I will request a motion to waive the reading of the resolution verbatim and move to vote.
I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the resolution verbatim and move to vote.
Motion by Reg.
I'll second.
Second by Loretta. So submit your vote on the chat to Shalice. Nope.
Just waiting on Rick.
It looks like he's frozen.
Dean, just a quick question.
Sorry, when Rick comes back on, we got to see when he froze so we can make sure he's up to speed. What was your question? Oh, where is it?
I just realizing the other motions, I didn't state that they were carried. Do I need to do that or go back?
I think Shalice did say that.
Okay.
Okay. Rick, where did you cut off last? Oh.
You're muted, Rick.
I heard very little after Derek was asking that we not read the entire resolution.
That's pretty much where, yeah. So then he called for a vote, or was motioned by Reg and seconded by Loretta, and then everyone was instructed to submit their votes to Shalice.
Rick, I'm confused. Is that?
I want to give clarification to my vote, so. Whether
Are you going to provide the vote first, or are you going to wait for me to call on you?
I don't know what's most appropriate.
I think Rick is he has not provided his vote yet, but I think he's requesting to make a comment when he does provide it. Is that correct, Rick?
Yeah, I just want to clarify my vote. So whether I vote now and clarify later, Mark, what should I do?
Dean's talking, but Dean's muted.
Oh,
sorry. I was saying the better practice would be to make your vote, and then you can provide an explanation for your vote. Unless you were, yeah.
Okay, Loretta is a yes. And this is all a motion to waive the reading, correct?
This was a motion to waive the reading and on the resolution itself.
And on the resolution itself.
No, we had the motion by Reg, second by Loretta, to waive the reading and move to vote. So now we're voting with our chat votes on the resolution. So this is a vote for the resolution.
Hang on, I think somebody might need to clarify, might need to provide more.
So you have 5 votes, Shalice?
One of the votes might be changing, hang on. I
Okay.
have a vote that's conflicting. It's an approval to waive the reading, but a separate vote for the resolution itself.
Okay, so everyone's clear. We already approved, I shouldn't say it. We already waived the reading and moved to vote. That was already done verbally. There was no chat for that. This chat vote is specifically to approve or deny the resolution for the PUD subdivision. If we need to send our vote again, maybe that's best case.
I'd suggest to clean that up, you send do it again, send a vote on either approving or denying this resolution.
So everyone just go on chat to Shalice privately and vote yes or no on the PUD subdivision resolution.
Okay. Reg is a yes. Derek, I'm sorry, Reg.
Let Reg confirm.
Yes, confirm.
Derek is a yes.
Yes.
Loretta is a yes.
Yes.
Marissa is a no.
Yes, I'm a no.
And Rick is a yes.
I'm a yes, and I wish to clarify my vote. As everybody knows, I've asked a lot of questions and sought to have a very transparent resolution. I did not want any detail to not be discussed or move forward. I wanted to look for maximum protection of neighboring properties and property owners in the process. I think the deviations that we were requested to decide on, we vetted them very thoroughly, very extensively. I do not believe this project is going to be injurious to the district or the neighborhood. I also want to state that the process that the planning board just went through, we are not casting judgment on the land transfer, the RFP that was done, or the pilot agreement that will be taken up by other agencies. I did not intend to support the project today, but I'm going to tell you that the extensive questioning and responses that I was given, I felt deserved my support. Thank you.
Okay, so we're 2/3 of the way there. The last.
Did we just motion carries then?
Oh, sorry. Thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
So, well, Derek, I'll turn it to you. We'll move on to the next item.
Motion carries, please. I'm sorry.
What was that? Did I miss someone?
Could somebody just say motion carries, please, for the record? I'm not sure.
I did, but
Yeah,
also
Derek said it. Yeah.
motion
Okay, all
carried.
right, thank you very much.
Okay, so we're moving on to the site plan application. I think first thing is to go through the finding statement at this point for the site plan, and then we have a resolution to approve the finding statement, and then after that we have the resolution to approve the site plan. So I've gone through this too very specifically and detailed. So it's similar as we went through it, in the past, but it's similar to some of the sections are very similar to the PUD and minor subdivision finding statement. But Dean, if you want to take us down and just note the points that might be different and just keep it moving, I guess, at this point.
Yes, thank you. So yes, as Derek noted, it is very similar. It's not a facsimile, so there are some differences. Again, this one is specific to the site plan as opposed to the subdivision or the boundaries of the PUD. Proposed action, very similar section, so we can go quickly through that. That's describing all the downtown area improvement projects, various dates of action by the lead agency. Okay, again, similar language regarding the planning board's role as an involved agency. With any DGIS, the goal of this involved agency is to strike the appropriate balance based on any environmental considerations as weighed against or in light of social or economic or other site conditions. Okay, this is very similar to the prior finding statement. Okay, next section just describes the various the area that the project's located within, as well as the various studies like the comprehensive plan or the LWRP or the DRI strategic investment plan. Again, this was very similar to the prior finding statement. Okay, talks about the building height itself, talks about the proximity to the Saranac River. Okay, next section talks about municipal utilities, very similar to the prior finding statement. Parking, again, you guys are well aware of the 92 parking spaces on site, or public spaces on site, as well as the additional spaces for the project's parking demand. Okay. And again, this incorporates the language that we had discussed during our line-by-line review back in the fall, as well as more recent comments, and in light of the ZBA's changes, those numbers were updated as well. Okay, on the section we're looking at now, it references the building inspector's letter, which makes a determination that the on-site parking spaces are adequate to meet the parking demand of this development project. Okay, as well as the comparative analysis with all City of Albany and Village of Port Chester. Fiscal and economic conditions just notes that we are in, again, hopefully on the tail end of a global pandemic, but that the conditions are not changing to the extent that this project is not marketable. Historic and cultural resources references the New York State Office of Historic Preservation and other consultants review. Recreation open space discusses the open space requirements and how this project is in conformance with the code's requirements for open space within a PUD. I'm going quickly, but each of these sections above has determined that these actions will not have a significant adverse environmental impact on the various topics, and that no mitigation is necessary. Okay, visual resources discusses the renderings or the elevations and cross sections of the structure and the impact it'll have on any view sheds, the lighting requirements, compliance, and the comparison to the existing parking lot, which is on site. There's a statement basically concurring and adopting the Common Council statement of findings, unless there are any findings identified by this board that are inconsistent, in which case those specific findings by this board would prevail as compared to the Common Council. And then there's the certification language, which is very similar to the prior finding statement. So if there's, if that accurately reflects this board's findings, then we can turn to the resolution for seeker.
Okay, so anyone have any questions on the site plan finding statement? Okay, then let's pull up the resolution for the finding statement. Is this one as short as the other one? Yeah. So I'll just read this one again. So resolution 2019-10A adopting secret finding statement for City of Plattsburgh Downtown Area Improvement Project Site Plan Application, January 12th, 2021. Resolved, the City of Plattsburgh Planning Board adopts a finding statement dated January 12th, 2021 for the City of Plattsburgh Downtown Area Improvement Projects, specifically for the site plan approval actions associated with Durkee Lot mixed-use development prepared pursuant to the seeker and Part 617 of the implementing regulations. Be it further resolved that the planning board authorizes its presiding chairperson to certify the finding statements. Be it further resolved that the planning board instructs the office of the city's building inspector to provide all notices necessary under SECRA.
Sorry, Melena's modifying that on the fly. We're going to have the CDO office provide those notices.
Okay. Be it, so I'll go back. Be it further resolved that the planning board instructs the office of the city's community development office to provide all notices necessary under SECRA.
Sorry to interrupt. Melanie, can you just delete that second office? Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Be it further resolved that the planning board directs that a copy of this resolution shall be filed immediately with the City of Plattsburgh City Clerk and sent to the project sponsor. So, do I have a move to vote, or can we make a motion to approve, or sorry, make a motion? Will someone make a motion to approve this resolution for the finding statement?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-10A.
Motion by Reg.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Loretta. And now just submit your vote.
Any discussion?
Sorry, any discussion? No discussion, so you can submit your vote to Shalice in the chat.
Oh, gosh.
Loretta, did you submit your vote?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Marissa is a no. Marissa, you're muted.
Yes, I unmuted myself. Yes, I am a no.
Derek is a yes.
Yes.
Rick is a yes.
Yes.
Reg is a yes.
Yes.
And Loretta is a yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so now we move on to the resolution for the actual site plan. Let me see. I think Melena is going to pull that up.
Can be.
Okay, so this is the final resolution on our agenda. It's lengthy, but not as lengthy as the prior. Well, quite close, but not. Well, never mind. It's just as lengthy. So this is a resolution to approve the preliminary site plan and map for this development project. Working through this document itself, we're well aware of what the proposal looks like as far as the number of residential units and square footage. and parking and open space and Saranac Riverfront access. So we can scroll down. To start, at least we had the initial conceptual design reviewed back in December of 2019. So here we are in January 2021. Okay, just references the prior PUD approvals that were just made by this body. And now just describes the project itself, so we can scroll pretty quickly because we're well aware of what the project is. Again, where the project's located within the central business district, which allows for a PUD, which PUD allows for more flexibility in design and uses. Okay, it references the downtown area of the project as well as the proximity to the Saranac River and the pedestrian walkway for the Saranac River Walk. Okay, describes the improved access to the Saranac water or Saranac River. Next two sections describe the environmental review under seeker, including the GEIS process, which was just concluded with this board. Next sections describe the public hearings which occurred, which were in conformance with the governor's executive orders in light of the COVID pandemic. Based on the changes, there was a subsequent public hearing which occurred in August after the initial one from the springtime. Next document refers to all the application materials. Next paragraph refers to the various state and local agencies that have reviewed the project, including the Historic Preservation Office and the various departments within the city. Okay, next section refers to the submissions made by the applicant, the public and agency comments, and the zoning code standards. Next few paragraph where Melena's cursor is on refers that the county planning board did disapprove the site plan with comments, which would trigger a supermajority requirement if this site plan were to be approved. It did go back to the planning board after the changes to the project in September, which again voted slightly different way, but still voted to disapprove the project with comments, still triggering the supermajority requirement. Next few sections refer to the third-party review by the LeBaers Group to review the engineering. Next paragraph refers to the ZBA's approval of the special use permits with conditions. And then we get to the actual meat of this resolution, which lays out the guidelines for site plan approval. First component is with respect to residential, that requires every residential building to have sufficient open space, convenient access, adequate fire protection, light and ventilation, and habitable rooms with reasonable privacy. That's the standard, and then the non-bold print describes how the proposal complies with those standards. At the end of not every, but at the end of most of these sections, there will be determination that the planning board finds that these aforementioned standards have been satisfied. Number two requires a need to provide sufficient consideration for passive recreation and non-vehicular open space and the lighting. There's a reference to an indoor gym, as well as the open space on site. Next section refers to the need to divert water away from the building to be disposed of from the site and to prevent soil saturation detrimental to structures. There's been a SWIP analysis or SWIP plan provided, which satisfies those criteria. Okay, next section for site plan review requires, where appropriate, paved walks, parking areas and driveways and landscaping. The determination is that this would have ADA compliant walkways and paths, and provide sufficient landscaping to blend with the proposed Saranac River Walk. 5 requires appropriate access for each dwelling unit. 6 requires any dilapidated structures to be removed. In this case, we had an existing parking lot, but there's also a farmers and crafters market building, which is proposed for use as a commercial space for underneath the building structure, and then within the pavilion, publicly accessible civic space. Any alterations and improvements shall be harmonious with existing conditions to remain on site. This determination does make a finding that those improvements or alterations are harmonious. 8 describes the requirement for vehicular access to provide maximum safety and ease of circulation and to eliminate traffic conflicts. This refers back to the GEIS study, which is the record before this board, and determines that that standard has been satisfied. So A was all residential, B is non-residential, which would include the commercial space. D1 describes that non-residential structures shall be constructed to maintain adequate access for delivery and service to customers and provide a safe and healthy environment. The determination is that there's adequate access for public health and safety. 2 requires entrances and exits to non-residential and commercial spaces to be designed to encourage customer use and provide safe means of ingress and egress, and confirms that that condition's been satisfied. 3 talks about off-street parking and off-street loading. It's a requirement to provide those loading or unloading zones and off-street parking with sufficient drive aisles between those parking spaces. 4 requires any storefronts or entrances to be integrated. They're designed to be integrated within the central business district, and refers back to a prior section to make that determination in the affirmative. 5, where we B1.5 requires each structure to have at least one entrance with direct access to a public street, which has been satisfied. 6 requires pavement, which has been satisfied. If it's not paved, it requires proper drainage. And if it's not paved, it requires proper landscaping, which again has been satisfied. General architecture. So this requires the general massing and character of the building to be organized to create harmonious continuity of exterior spaces. There was certainly changes over time. The applicant was responsive to the requests from certain members of this board and has modified the material. And then there's been a vetting by the Office of Parks and Recreation, as well as this board, to confirm or to make a determination with respect to the harmonious continuity of these spaces. Two describes the requirement for individual building scaling to be proportional and normally accepted with respect or with consideration given to their adjoining properties. While this is an existing parking lot, there are structures across Durkee Street on the ICV lot and on Bridge Street. And this is a determination that these individual buildings on site are proportionally scaled pursuant to normally accepted design standards with proper consideration given. Building materials must be durable and harmonious, and if appropriate, have a continuity of treatment. And based on, I forget the proprietary name, the Stowe brick, with varied other building materials, this board is making that determination. Okay, treatment of the rear and side should also be consistent, which it is, or this board's making a determination it is. Same thing for the architectural treatment. D talks about streets, pedestrian walks, and open space. requires that any such open space or pedestrian access shall be integrated into the overall site design. Here again, we have the Saranac River Walk as well as pedestrian walk over to the Betty Little Arts Park. Okay, landscaping and paved pedestrian walks are required to be provided along the lines of the most intense use, which based on the natural features of the Saranac River as well as the the Betty Little Arts Park, they are aligned together, as well as the Madonna Monument Park across Bridge Street. That the pedestrian walk shall provide maximum safety and separation from vehicular traffic and shall emphasize desirable views. So this language is supporting a determination that there's sufficient safety and separation provided. 4 requires a treatment of the materials for the paving and lighting fixtures, and this is a determination that those standards have been met. Same concept for open spaces. If we turn to off-street parking and loading, E is requiring off-street parking and loading facilities to be coordinated to minimize the number of entrances and exits. Based on the project site plans and application materials, which includes the curb cuts on Durkee Street and Bridge, this is a determination that the standard has been satisfied. Okay, there's a requirement to make sure that pedestrian access to which services the facility shall not be in conflict with the vehicular movements. And if it can't be avoided, any conflicts can't be avoided, then there shall be proper signage. There's a determination that that condition has been satisfied. Similarly, any parking or loading area shall be landscaped or properly screened where we're able to avoid unattractive sites. And this would be a determination that has been satisfied. 4 is design standards. Refers to what the off-street parking requirements can be for subcompact, compact, or standard cars. And if approved, this would be a determination that those off-street parking standards have been satisfied. Then there's a lot more treatment of the parking standards in 2 and 3. And it just lays out all of the specific calculations provided by the applicant. C, or the section above, is that A? Can you go up a tiny bit, Melina? Or 2 or 3 rather, requires sufficient aisle separation. And again, there's a determination, if approved, that there is sufficient traffic flow viability. Okay, B was inapplicable. F describes landscape design. Again, each of these determinations is in the affirmative, if approved, that there's sufficient landscaping that's appropriate and integrated, and there are no existing trees, at least in the paved portion, but wherever possible, those existing trees or vegetation should be integrated, and there's a determination that has been accomplished. Okay, parking areas shall be unobtrusive and appropriately screened, and there's a determination, if approved, that has been satisfied. There's a reference to the representations by the CDO office from August and concurrence and adoption of those recommendations. There's further resolution. There's a double comma there, but not a big deal. Under B, further result. That the planning board finds and determines that the site plan and proposed changes in the CDO or Community Development Department's recommendation letter will be approved. That the engineer shall submit a revised paper plan to show compliance with any conditions with the requisite number of copies. Next resolution says that this site plan will be, can you go up slightly? Will be, will expire if the applicant withdraws the project or fails to obtain any permits within 1 year from the date of this decision. The next resolved paragraph runs through the various conditions, which would be compliance with all permit requirements, DEC requirements, SUP requirements, PUD subdivision requirements, SWIP and site plan requirements, easement documentation, and any other requirements set forth by this planning board and its discussions. Next section authorizes the planning board to authorize and direct the chairman to execute the preliminary site plan after it's certified by the CDO, and then transmit the various documents. So that's the current resolution. Based on our prior discussion, I would suggest the following language subject to everyone's review. Elena, are you ready? This is based on the comment from Rick regarding the design of Durkee Street.
And this goes in as one of the conditions, correct? That's what
it can be either a condition or in the whereas section.
Oh, okay, yeah. We were talking about it as a whereas.
Trying to figure out where that would be appropriate to not break up the flow. Maybe here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just spitball right now and we can modify it if the board deems appropriate. Whereas an agency or entity designing Durkee Street, comma, which conceptual design was reviewed within the GEIS, comma, must take into consideration and facilitate the approved site plan. Again, that's my chicken scratch, so let's give it a hard look.
Something's missing. Didn't I hear something about facilitate?
Yeah, must take into consideration and facilitate.
Wait,
Yeah,
what?
right there. Right there, and facilitate. Yep.
And did we want to change conceptual design to conceptual illustration? I know we had talked about that.
Yeah.
I think that covers what we were looking for.
Rick, what do you like that, Rick, or do you want something else?
You're muted, Rick.
Yeah, just give me a second to digest it. It's all right. As you can see, reading through this resolution, the importance of Durkee Street really is worthy of a lot of consideration.
Silly question, Rick. Would you prefer any agency to an agency after the whereas?
I would. That kind of broadens the.
Yeah, I thought you might like the why.
Yeah. I don't know what else we would add to that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have a, just a, when an agency is designing the Durkee Street, whoever's doing that, and approving that, which would be the city, do we want anything in there additionally about them communicating with Prime in terms of creating their plan? Or does that go without saying?
Their plan's already going to be
Right.
in place.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Okay. Yeah, that's good enough. I mean,
it's hard to get, the only thing I was thinking, Rick, was, it's hard to get specific on turning radiuses and, angled parking and I don't know how to cover that without going that deep into it. Or if this already captures all of that.
I would think that it would capture it, only in that we've identified the size of the vehicles, like pumper trucks and ladder trucks. Those are the largest vehicles that would be in and out of that site. They've already been identified previously. So in that consideration, I think the next phase of street design will have to consider that.
Okay. So, any other thoughts on the resolution? Questions? Okay. Then I guess I'll request a motion to waive the reading of the resolution verbatim and a move to vote.
And that we can just do a quick, I don't think we need to use Shalice for that part of it. That added confusion.
Yes. So just do a roll call, Shalice, verbally.
We need a motion in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm looking for a motion to waive the reading of the resolution verbatim and a move to vote.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Reg.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Loretta. Any discussion? Okay, real quick, I just, before we vote, what Rick had mentioned before, that was some of the things I wanted to just point out too, but I know I've said it before throughout this whole thing, because there's been a lot of public comment, a lot of things obviously going around with the whole DRI. And basically, I just want to say that what we were tasked with doing is looking at the site plan as a planning board and the PUD and the minor subdivision and deciding based on those, the merit of that project based on what's there. Nothing else to do with the downtown revitalization or any of the other projects. So just so the public knows, that's my personal stance as far as the planning board, as far as a member of the planning board goes. Yes, Mark?
Did you vote on the motion to dispense with the reading of the resolution and I missed it?
Yes.
No, yeah, no, you didn't vote. No, not yet.
Oh, we're doing discussion.
All right, sorry, we got a little confused here. You asked for and received a motion and a second just on the limited purpose of dispensing with the reading of the resolution.
And the move to vote.
Right, but not the vote itself on the resolution,
Right.
correct?
And
And
then,
that's what you're having a discussion about? It sounded like you thought you had voted on that.
no, I'm doing the discussion now.
Okay,
I guess it'd be a little cleaner if you do have a roll call on that motion to waive the reading, and then you can move the actual resolution and then have the discussion.
that's what I was thinking.
Okay. So then go back to, we can do a roll call verbally for this.
For moving to waive the reading.
Waive the reading and moving to vote.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Loretta Rietsema,
Yes.
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
and Derek Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Okay, now you can entertain a motion to approve the resolution. If it's seconded, then you can do your discussion.
Okay, sorry, I was ahead of myself. Okay, so looking for a motion to approve the resolution 2019-10B for the site plan.
I move that the board votes to approve resolution 2019-10B, Durkee project site plan.
Motion by Loretta.
I'll second.
Second by Reg. Any discussion?
Hey, I'd just like to continue with the subject that Derek was talking about. As for my clarification at the for the last clarification vote we had, we are not here to discuss, nor are we tasked to discuss, the RFP, the pilot agreement, land ownership transfers. We've been tasked to, in this particular case, evaluate the site plan as described in the motion. We've been also tasked to mitigate any types of injurious type action that this site plan approval would assume. And that being said, I think we've again vetted each and every issue in detail that would impact neighbors. So we have limited authority, but what authority we had, we exercised, and we did the best we could to make this a compatible project to the district. That's it.
Thank you, Rick. You said that much better than I did and at the appropriate time. So yes, I think all of that is what I was going for. And, I think a lot of the things were set in place. We just happen to be the last vote on all of this. So a lot of it came down on us, but again, we were tasked with a specific duty, and that's all we could look at. So that's it for me. Anyone else have any discussion? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so you can submit your vote to Shalice privately in the chat, and this is for approval, denial of the site plan resolution.
Derek, I think you just said this is for approval or denial. Is that what you said?
Approval.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, approval. So yeah,
Right.
sorry. So a yes vote would indicate approval. A no vote would be against the approval.
Reg is a yes.
Yes.
Loretta is a yes.
Yes.
Rick is a yes.
Yes.
Marissa is a no.
Yes, I'm a no.
And Derek is a yes.
Yes,
Motion carries.
motion carries. Okay.
I just wanted to thank everyone. It's been a fun year and a half. And I hope you don't miss my face on
Fun.
planning board meetings.
And I'll second that. Thank you all very much for all your work this past year and a half.
Yes, thank you. I know you guys volunteer and you put a lot of time into this one, and we really appreciate your thorough efforts. Thanks again.
Okay.
And stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Any other business? I don't believe we have any. And this time I'll stay on for the adjournment. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right. So so we need a second. Motion by Reg,
Second by Rick.
second by Rick. So roll call, Shalice?
Marissa Gilbert,
Yes.
Derek Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Rick Perry,
Yes.
Reg Carter,
Yes.
Loretta Rietzema.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stay safe.